want to thank the witness for being here today. Appreciate it. You know what's astounding to me about the president's budget as I reflect upon it is he manages to propose the largest tax increase close to the history of our country while still having a $1.3 trillion deficit in 12 and bringing our national debt to $26 trillion in the next 10 years, while again proposing this huge tax increase. I mean, it's like the worst of both worlds. It's staggering to me. I guess I have a fundamental question for you, which is the Medicare, the trustees of Medicare, independent group, not Republicans, not Democrats, have said that Medicare is going to go bankrupt in 2024. And so what is the president's plan to preserve Medicare?
Well, I think just to come back to your first comment, I think we have to look at the bottom line here. And what the bottom line is by 2018, deficits as a percent of GDP are below 3%, and debt as a percent of GDP is stabilized. So I think it's wrong to focus on our current and instead to look at the deficit reduction.
Am I missing something, though? Or if we look 10 years forward, is our national debt not close to $26 trillion under the proposal?
It is, if you look at it on a gross basis, and a lot of that is what the president has inherited in terms of unfunded 2001 and 2003 tax cuts and unfunded, unpaid for Medicare Part D, wars that weren't paid for. So the president inherited a lot, and an economy, as Senator Conrad said up front, which was in a great recession.
But he did add during his presidency close to $5 trillion to the debt, did he not?
So to pivot back to your question on Medicare.
Well, just to be clear, just so we're clear, because you were coming back at me in terms of what the president inherited, but during his presidency, we've added close to $5 trillion to the debt.
I think the key here is the bottom line. The bottom line is we get below 3% of GDP, and we get debt as a percent of GDP to a stable level.
Well, just so we're clear, did he add close to $5 trillion to the debt?
I'd want to confirm that.
Oh, 4.9.
The situation that the president inherited, if you look at root cause.
So you don't know the answer to that question?
The root cause problem here is what the president inherited in terms of unfunded Medicare Part D, unfunded Bush tax cuts. Well, we are now putting ourselves on a much more sustainable path, one that results in debt as a percent of GDP of less than 3%.
But if we owe $26 trillion in the coming, our national debt goes to $26 trillion in the coming 10 years, how are my children going to repay $26 trillion?
I think the important thing here is that this is a major step forward. The president has shown a lot of leadership starting back in April. So leadership around the debt ceiling talks in the summer, leadership in September around the proposal to the super committee, leadership here with this budget. This budget represents a major milestone. So it's not the end state, but it is a major milestone. It's a big step forward, and we should work together to make it law.
I just want to be clear. So it's your testimony that a budget that increases our national debt to $26 trillion, close to, in the next 10 years, is a mark of leadership by this president.
A budget that ensures that we continue this economic recovery, create jobs, brings down unemployment, gets us to a situation where the deficit as a percent of GDP is below 3%, where debt as a percent of GDP is stabilized, is a major milestone and step forward. There's obviously more work ahead.
Well, you and I disagree on what a major milestone is, but can I get back to my original question? By 2024, Medicare is going bankrupt. What is the president's plan to save Medicare?
So the Affordable Care Act saves over $100 billion, according to CBO, in the first decade, more than $1 trillion in the second decade. In the president's proposal is $360 billion of health care savings. These are all steps forward.
Is that going to save Medicare? So can I go home to my seniors and say that's going to be enough to preserve Medicare so that my grandparents in 2024 won't have to worry that it's going away?
Medicare needs to continue to increase, as we talked about earlier, its productivity, decrease the variation in care, which leads to oftentimes poor outcomes and higher costs. We need to just keep going after Medicare in terms of making sure that we preserve the compact that we have with our citizens, and at the same time continue to drive down the costs.
My time is up, but I don't see anything in this budget that is going to preserve the compact we have with seniors, which would require real strong leadership to preserve Medicare, which very shortly in 2024 is going bankrupt, which is a huge driver of our budget issues. And I just wanted to point out that as critical as you have been about the tax state and blaming that for the $5 trillion of debt that the president has added, it was the president who signed those tax provisions into law in 2010. So I appreciate your being here today, but I do not agree that putting our national debt to $26 trillion in the next 10 years is the mark of leadership of the type of fiscal responsibility we need to address the debt crisis our country faces.
Senator Enzi.